This week on Common Grounds TV, we talk to a guy who wakes up at 4 a.m. to make sure your coffee is perfect, and we speak with the most passionate roaster on the West Coast.
Not much moves at 5 a.m. Garbage men, crows, and this guy. Someone has to be at the cafe long before opening, baking and preparing for your 7 a.m. drive-to-work latte. Espresso is a delicate thing with more flavor notes than wine, so the key is to extract the absolute best out of the beans through careful preparation and setup. Most hipster grunge pseudo-slackers sleep well past 10 a.m., but not our guy Az. He's calibrating the grinders, testing and resetting the machines, and perfecting the espresso for the coming day, all before 9 a.m. He's also invented several fictitious band names, including Alice's Dead Toilet Seat and Squid Incorporated, just to baffle his less hip friends. He also knows a lot more about coffee than we do, and that annoys us quite a bit.
So here we have Gibraltar. I don't remember who invented it, somewhere in the States. We don't have a proper Gibraltar cup though, so we call it a Jobraltar after the owner of the store. It's basically similar to somewhere between a macchiato and a really wet trad cap, but the milk is steamed to 110 degrees, which is where the milk is at its sweetest point. Of course, 2 shots, like pretty much all traditional drinks. And yeah, here we go. So yeah, pre-infusing for a fair amount of time right now with the espresso. It's pretty fresh, so it's coming out quite bright. Nice thick crema. So minimal aeration in the milk for this drink. Keeps it nice and smooth. Get that nice shine. And I like to pour a little bit of milk in, swirl it, that way the color stays even. There's good definition. That was a great pour. There you go.
Well, my name is Brian Turco. I'm born in East Vancouver, Little Italy, Vancouver, the original Little Italy, which was, we call the Drive now. And I've been around coffee since 1981. It was just something I was brought up with. The tipping point is I was born and raised in Little Italy. I grew up with Italians. I'm Ukrainian, Canadian, but you become part of your culture. I've been brought up with espresso coffee. Espresso back then, you didn't get paid to learn it. You had to hang around and pester these guys just to be able to get behind the bar. I would literally go into the Italian coffee bar, which is now Marcello's restaurant on Commercial Drive, and sit there all by myself at night and for 4 hours just watch people on the espresso machine. That's how I learned. They wouldn't pay me. I had to prove my way. And I was really messed up in a positive way when I saw this big mother of an espresso machine and this beautiful thing with this little single filter holder with this one line of beautiful creamy nectar coming out of this machine. I was absolutely amazed. I thought, I got to get me one of them, you know? It was hedonistic in its purest form. The espresso machine technically is the most hedonistic coffee maker in the entire world. It was the Italians that put coffee culture in place. There was lots of coffee culture, but nobody was more fanatic and more passionate than the Italian. I tell you the truth, I am a bona fide coffee lover. When I first tasted espresso, I was like anybody else. I couldn't stand it. I thought, wow, this is harsh, this is stupid. I'm not going to pay for this. Get me a mocha. So I had, and Frank at Calabria years ago, he made the best mocha because he put whipped cream in it. And that's when I discovered actually the psychology of the palate. Did you know what gourmet actually means? Food quality. It means fats, carbohydrates, and proteins. And real good coffee is endowed with these food qualities. And that's what makes it easy to assimilate and easy to palate. It's a beautiful, it's cerebral coffee, if it's good coffee. If it rots your gut, a lot of people think the irritation from coffee comes from too much caffeine. It's just chlorogenic acid and unbalanced coffees, poorly grown coffees and the like. So in essence, I started like everybody. I started with the mocha, moved over to the latte, didn't like it personally. And then I discovered the cappuccino at Joe's Cappuccino Bar in around 1982. And they made it right. It was very rich, but you put a little bit of yellow sugar, brown sugar. It was delicious, and we mixed it back then. My first espresso I tasted on its own was 1982, and it was at the El Centro, I think, the first cafe, one of the first cafes on Commercial Drive, which is the El Mercato night right now. And here's something you got to realize. 25, 30 years ago, most people wouldn't even go into Little Italy, never mind into a coffee bar. Yeah, no, it just wasn't, people were intimidated by it. But that was the only place where you could get authentic espresso. And that's a thing we want to talk about a little later, is a North American misconception and authenticity. It's Italian espresso is genuine, it's the original. If you need to understand their history, the World War II, to understand how they even came up with that taste. There's nobody who's done more research and development in espresso coffee than the Italian coffee culture. So with espresso, I tasted this one day in a cappuccino, and I went, wow, this is good. I'm gonna try an espresso. And I put a little bit of sugar. I couldn't believe it. It was delicious. Licorice, caramel, toffee, vanilla. It just, it impregnates you. It brands your experience. So I walk into Corrado's, the original Milano coffee in Little Italy, and started talking to this guy. Walked into his store, and this is mind-boggling, you guys. I don't know if anybody ever experienced this who's in espresso, especially in 1991. You walk into the store, and up on the menu board is 9 blends, or 7 blends, I'm sorry. And I says, well, which one's espresso, which one's your drip, which one's your dark? He says, Italian's no roasted dark. I says, well, you know, for that chocolate taste. I was trying to sound heady. And he says, Italians don't need to burn the coffee to make chocolate. We pull the chocolate out, the color tones. I went, okay, whatever. I said, so what one of these are espresso? He says, all of them are espresso. Italians don't drink anything else. And I says, well, how many beans do you got? Because I knew, most had 3 or 4, right? He says, 7 to 11 beans. I just went stupid at that time. To this day, I tell people that we're doing 11 bean blends and they look in disbelief. They don't even believe it. They don't even believe it. So imagine 20 years ago, I was in disbelief. Anybody would be. This was like so far ahead into the future. So anyways, after talking with this guy, he didn't understand English very well. His cheeks got red. It was Francesco Carratolo, who's my mentor and best friend, seriously. All things coffee. There's nobody knows more about coffee than this guy. Mr. Carratolo, the owner of Milano Coffee, originally when he came from Italy, he ended up in Seattle, late 70s, early 80s, and came to know, which was before Starbucks, was the El Giorno, the owner, Howard Schultz. He befriended him, did some consulting for him. I believe he consulted for them 3 times. As you know, I think it was just before they went public. He consulted last for them in 1994, did a taste test for them. And then 1997, Howard Schultz and whoever in Starbucks, Elena, that little lady that works at Milano, was there at the time. They came through our back door to put an offer on Carratolo's intellectual property. And this is a fact, and this is a true story. We were considered an option. Milano Coffee, Vancouver City, and our recipes were considered an option to buy for the big mermaid company, okay? And what it was, very simply, as Carratolo spoke this, as we did an interview with the Vancouver Sun, is really simple. He said, what do you want? I'm just a small business, right? He said, it's simple. You're a man of few words, Francesco. So what we're just want to ask you is we're interested in purchasing your business. We don't want your books. We don't want your roaster. We just want your recipes, your brand, and I believed him for a while to consult. But I knew they wanted our recipes. He says, I'm sorry, I'm a family-run business. In doing this interview, they were explained to him, the company that I mentioned, explained to Carratolo that his friend, Umberto Bizzarri of Torrefazione Italia, sold to their competitors. So they sought out our intellectual property in order to compete with that taste, authentic taste. Even those guys are saying it. Carratolo says, I'm no interest, I'm a family-run business. His concern when we did this interview with the paper was not they wanted it for competition, but they buy the future and bury it. We would not be having this conversation, and I wouldn't be talking about 12, 13 bean espresso blends if Mr. Carratolo would have sold, and like you said, took a departure away from tradition.